And I need to recopy my replace it with the one you have to look higher. You want to teach. I want to go and teach.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, Namnukwa, Osinachi. One man, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
There, so I copied it, so I don't know which one. But let me see. I think this is it. The slides are 13. I think this is it. Yeah.
Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be that. I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, I'm no qua, Osinachi. One lemon, Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, Mama, Osinachi.
Technology. We are ready. Welcome back to this session. I would say the part 2 was a continuation of the first panel on discontinuities of historical legacies in Kannywood. And there are supposed to be 3 presenters on this panel. Partly, we are going to be having just 2 presentations. I think that would give us more time for a more robust discussion on the title. And so this panel are myself, Rukayat Banjo from Bayero University, and I am going to be discussing gendered legacies, women power, historical narratives in Kannywood. And the first presenter is going to be Saidu Kasim Adamu from Yekwa Center for Historical Research, Kano. He's going to be discussing moments of rupture and discontinuities in Kannywood using Zauzau in Izu Ojuku's Amina and Yasin in Awal Mati Zauzau. Thank you. So I'll invite Kasim Adamu for his presentation. Yeah, of course you can bring it. You should come. Yes. Yes. And we have all the time, but I think we have about 1 hour, 30 minutes. So please take your time and
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Said Kasim Adamu, and I am a student of history. So I am not actually a team scholar, but I am reading history from the angle of a student of history. And the title of my presentation today is Moments of Rupture and Continuities in Kannywood, Zazzau in Amina, and Yasin Awal's Mati Zazzau, which are 2 prominent themes. And one thing they share in common is their presence on Netflix. And I'll start by stating that one of the primary focus of arts and artists since time immemorial has been to do art better, to make art better. I mean, how to showcase their art, their artwork, to the public better since time immemorial, since the eras of Greek dramas in theaters and the rest, So we have been experiencing the evolution of drama, theater, and art over time. And one focus they all share is how do we make art better? How do we bring our production? How do we bring our experiments to the public, better? And that has shaped, the progression of cinema and cinematography over time. So from the era of drama, theater, to the era of the Magic Lanterns, the Phantasmagoria, the kindness for Edison, up to what we now know as what cinema and cinematography. So it has always been, how can we do things better? And this also brought us to this period when we have, platforms like Netflix, that let's say, filmmakers are used to showcase their art. So just trying to make this the foundation of my discussion, and also so that we can put this at the back of our minds as we progress in our discussion. So next slide, please. So the field of film studies and distribution has garnered significant attention in the 21st century, particularly due to these advancements that we are talking about of technological innovation. This has led to deeper exploration of storytelling's varied significance, especially as it pertains to cultural nexuses that reflect the complexities of historical legacies. So in this context, we are looking at the true Nigerian film industry, because the thing we are trying to analyze are a product of these two Nigerian film industry of Nollywood and Kannywood. But I need to make this clear that while Anina, which is a product of Nollywood, is a historical film because of the producers, the makers claim that they are reflecting a situation that happened in the 16th century Hausa land. Mate Alazo is a comedy which is purely fictional. It's majorly a fiction, But then, in the traces of this fiction, we look at certain historical facts that are either presented or represented or misrepresented, in the films. And that is one of the things that we want to look at as the film industry progresses and makes its inroads into the world of platformization, which will also enable them to favorably compete with the more advanced Nollywood. Next slide, please. So my aim in this discussion is that to analyze the extent to which these two themes represent and extract an aspect of Rizal and Hausaland. And in this context, to reconstruct and analyze how each of these themes attempt to represent an aspect of history. And to analyze, finally, the shifts from traditional film distribution to the adoption of platforms such as Netflix, as I made mention of earlier. Next slide, please. So, and my discussion will be grounded or hooked on two important theories, which are theory of invention by Robert Rosenstein, whereby he posited that invention is inevitable to simplify complexities of events in a plausible dramatic structure that will fit within thematic, time constraint. Because if filmmakers are making historical film, that's in order to give them the opportunity to make that historical film to reflect those aspects of the past, that there is no way you can run away from invention. It's different from taking the artistic license that filmmakers are mostly interested in and handing it over to them. But just give them what we call invention, whereby they use symbols, they use metaphors to make historical events look lively, so that you can be able to analyze those things in that aspect. Then we have the issue of the convergence theory by Henry Jenkins, who also thinks that convergence is not just about technological, shifts. It's more of what cultural shifts, not just about what from drama, cinema, theater, and the rest. No, it also means what cultural shift. Because as you move, then those people who are responsible for watching those art, work of art of yours, they are also moving along with you. And when you move, you also move with the changing time in which your work of art is actually done. Yeah. So we move to the next slide, and here we have, I mean, I say why the one against the other. Well, I'll explain this, but this is Mati, Azozo, and this is Amina. I say firstly because there are instances that represent this, the past of what Hausaland, Zazo, in these two places, which either conforms with historical facts or not. And secondly, because both themes represent historical periods of the time they are set, their respective time. Now I'll go to give us a brief synopsis of what the film Amina is all about. Amina, released spring in 2021. And it is about the backstories of Queen Amina of Sicily, and one of the major things she was known of is what expanding the borders of Sicily to various, Hausa territories, and building walls all over, Hausa land. So there is issue of whether Amina do exist or not. It's a debate that perhaps we are not currently interested in. But what we want to analyze here is Amina as a film focuses on the history of Queen Amina as the filmmaker presented to. But then, what happens in the film? It is a film that presented a narration of a situation whereby in Hausa land, they believe women are exploited, women are oppressed in the film. That is what it's presented. In fact, it went to an extent that because of this exploitation, because of this oppression, the filmmaker presented the fact that Amina was prevented from what? From becoming the king of the queen, and inheriting the throne of her father, and that brought a what problem in the kingdom. So this led Amina to go into war against her kingdom in order to claim that right, that's her rights. So what the maker presented here is that it is a situation where the women are oppressed and Amina fought against that oppression. That's right. But what we are mostly interested in is how the filmmaker, presents the presence, the Islamic religion during that period. That is one thing we're mostly interested in here. How Islam was portrayed in Zazzau in the 16th century. Because first appearance in the film, we see a wrestling bout, and then we see a king, and then we see a priestess, not an ulama. And I need to remind us that Islam came into Zazzau in the 15th century, which means by the 16th century, during the reign of Amina, Islam is already in existence. But then we saw what the filmmaker presented Clara Chukura, well honored with a seat there, without any ulama, without any scholar there. You understand? So we also see her in close discussion with the king. They are having discussion about the future of what Amina, who is supposed to succeed the king. You understand? So what we can understand from this is the use of that theory of invention by the filmmaker, by trying to bring about a lot of issues, things to show that what the society looks like is that it is a society that mixes Islam and syncretism. Why do we say Islam and syncretism? Because at the end of the king, we saw one of the servants of the monarchy, come to him and say, Allah, Girma. We hear the word Allah for the first time there in the film.
But then we have seen instances whereby misrepresentation, syncretism and spirituality and traditionalism is shown. But then Allah came, which shows that, yes, what the filmmaker is trying to show towards example, there is the existence of Islam, but it is what secondary. It's relegated into not it was not the primary religion. They give more emphasis toward spirituality, traditionalism, syncretism. So they mix that religion with Islam, and this is very crucial to our discussion. Then the next slide. Then I'll come back to later to analyze this. I turn back to the theme Mate Azazo. And one point is Mate Azazo is a chronicle, if I may use this word. It's not Mate Azazo was not the first thing. It is a continuation of two other things that have begun, that have come before it. One of those things was Wanigari, which was made in 2013. Then Mati Dalagu, 2014, or something like that. And then Mati Azazo, 2020. So these three things, have their distinct role about how they tend to tell us about the period they are trying to portray. They are post-colonial production. They are not like Kwasi Azazo, Amina that had produced in the 16th century. They portray the post-colonial period in Nigeria, and they portray significant issues that are very central to the social nexus of the society during that period. We talk about the issue of inheritance. We talk about the issue of marriage. We talk about the issue of murder and how an illegitimate child. The brief I can give you from the beginning is Wanigari. Wanigari was a film by Yasin Awal as well. And it's what it tends to show is that there is a man who is a wealthy man who gets married to he travels a lot. He goes around as a merchant, and each town he goes to, he tends to marry a family. He tends to marry a wife there and get children without the older family knowing what's happening. So he went to Zaria, got married, he has children. He went to another town, can't remember the name, he got married, he got children, without this family knowing that there is another family that exists. And he had a lot of money, and he's very mindset. He doesn't spend his money. So when he died, so these ones were thinking, we are going to share the inheritance among ourselves. Mati and Latu, we are going to share the inheritance among ourselves. And the spots, then they saw a family coming in that, we are also his children. They're like, what? We're his children? Without knowing someone else coming, we are also his children. So at long last, it came out that the man had 6 wives instead of the accepted Islamic 4 wives. So now, this way the issue of how they portray Islam. They look at the social problem during the period and say, okay, what is the Islamic injunction about a situation like this? In inheritance, if a Muslim man dies and he has more than 4 wives, what the scriptures say is that from the 4th wife, the 5th wife, all wives from the 5th wives, are not responsible, are not entitled, to inherit him. That is one point. And as that was, clear, another issue surfaced that, okay, what happened if a man kills his father? Because Mati and Lado were aligned to kill that, to murder their father in order to inherit, their his estate. They connived with their mothers, the 2 mothers, to murder their parents, their father. So another Islamic injunction, like, okay, if a person murders its parents, then he's not entitled to what? To also inherit that particular person. Right? So then another issue also came in. What about a person that was born, that was given birth outside wedlock? Because Mati in Monegari was what? Was given birth by by his mother before, she got married to his father. And so she got pregnant, you see, and only his friend knew. And that injunction also came out that, okay, the Islamic rule is that an illegitimate child will never inherit his parent. So what I'm trying to show us here is how these two things portray the situation of this Islam since the pre-colonial period, and how this changes, and how, as a result of this change, critical issues that has to do with scholarship when it comes to Islam are what's arousing, and we tend to know what the religion says about them. Okay. Next slide, please. And here, so those two things is Wanigari. The other thing is Madina Ladu, which also focus on the critical scholarly issue. Because Mati was driven because he didn't inherit his parent. Then he was driven out. Both Mati and Ladu, they left the community and they went to another village, and they established themselves as scholars, even though they hadn't done anything. And this is what happened during the colonial Nigeria. You understand? Because people who are not learned will claim to know, and then they keep what Islamic burdens. They correct zakats, and they exempt people from what? From paying zakat, even though they are entitled to pay. So these are interesting issues which these things try to tell us about. So I now turn to the theme Mati Azazo, which also continues from where this thing, started from. Because as we progress, we see, as you can see in the image, Mati coming into Zazo, and he saw what people reciting the Holy Quran. He said, what are these people here? Then Garba told him that, they are reciting the Holy Quran, because we know whoever you see in Zazo has memorized the Quran. So here you can see how the progression, how it's trying to portray, to tell us how Islam, developed from showing us Islamic values, to showing us Quranic schools where young children have memorized the Holy Quran. Again, away from what is shown by in Israel in the 16th century. So we can use these two things to analyze this whole situation. Next slide. So let's say what it means to us, what these two trails tell us. What this representation of the state of Israel and those in both Amina and Mati as also portray to us is the changing state of religious practices, development, the evolution in Hausa between pre-colonial and post-colonial Nigeria. And however, in achieving this, Amina used invention. In achieving its goal, Amina as a thing uses invention to symbolize some issues which perhaps because we are not there in the 16th century, but then we put this issue as what symbolic, to us, and we now understand, the situation, how it was like pronouncing Allah only once, when issue of spirituality are present, So Mati also, on the other hand, focuses on using what critical social religious, scenarios, bordering on marriage, inheritance, murder, and the ruling on illegitimate child to understand post-colonial, Hausa life. So now, I say from old to the new. Now, as we have mentioned, Kannywood is, most scholars will tell us that Kannywood began even before Nollywood began, but then Kannywood cannot go close to where Nollywood is now, even though there have been serious attempts by scholars, by filmmakers to meet up with the contemporary world in the way art is done, in the way film is, spoken and shared. Nezero Damaja, Alinu, they have all attempted to make things with Netflix, to show their films with Netflix in response to the contemporary, the growing, way in which things should be shown, but they were very unsuccessful. But the successful attempts by Abul Yasin represent a major turning point. And why does it even represent a major, turning point? Is because following his chronicle, he began his film not as a series, but as independent films from the traditional way of showing things, and then he, made a role into the platforms, Netflix. And this is this we see as a major turning point. But then one issue is very crucial, and that is how the film Amina uses disregards some basic historical facts. Not Amina and Mati also disregards some basic historical facts, which we believe that should be corrected. For instance, when Matia and Garba, when Garba asks Mati, what is your name? He says Mati. And then Garba says, okay, my own name is Garba, but if you like, you can call me Garba na Aminat. Garba, Aminat's beloved. He says, Matata Tokwarachi, the Amina Saronia, and Saronia Zazu. He said, my wife is a namesake to Amina, the queen of Zazu. So the way he presented his speech then, you think that, oh, so Amina is still the queen of Zazu? Because there is no thing to show that he was trying to make a reference to the past. So when you are talking, making a film, such thing like that, then, oh, so she's still a queen of Zazu. Something that happened is something. So my point here is that Kannywood filmmakers sometimes blatantly disregard basic historical facts. And at this early age, it may hinder their attempt to compete globally, because they always look at how to compete with Nollywood. If these small historical facts, historical can be disregarded, I think there will be a lot of problems. So, in conclusion, both Matia and Amina are product of a booming film industries, Kannywood and Nollywood. But the latter seems to dominate the scene not only because of its budget, of production and technological advancement, but also in terms of seriousness, to production. While Kannywood takes basic facts for granted, say Nollywood are mostly serious, down to earth, and this will prevent Kannywood from catching up with Nollywood as it finds its way into other platforms like Netflix. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that presentation, particularly for breaking down Amina from the perspective of history, Islamic history. Yes, I think that is really commendable. I would say that good enough. I will be using two of the films that have been used here today, May Martaba and Amina in my presentation. But there is a point of departure, or I will say that there are points of detours. While Dame earlier presented on May Martaba as a neo-Kannywood film, I am looking at it from the gendering of power, not about the portrayal or the representation of women, but I am looking at how power is portrayed using the female figures in the films. And so I will be talking to you about gendered legacies, women power, and historical narratives in Kannywood. Thank you. Can I have the slides? Yes. So here, we are talking about the construction and remembrance of female power in Kannywood films. You are starting from the bottom. Great. So that is my title, Gendered Legacies, Women Power, and Historical Narratives in Kannywood. I know that there are ways by which the film is looked at, particularly from the culture within which it emerges. And now, I will talk about that as I progress, but introduction, I'm going to be talking about the construction and remembrance of female power in Kannywood films. We know in African society, a lot of studies, have been conducted in Nollywood, in Kannywood, and other woods that permeate the Nigerian movie industry. The construction of women have majorly been looked at through the lens of representation. How are the women represented? But for this study, I am going to be looking at the role of women, women's role in history as often being portrayed through patriarchal storytelling. But here, we are going to have a shift from how women are portrayed in most of these films. We are particularly looking at historical films and how power is being portrayed using the female figures. That means we are talking about gendering power and not female representation. And so the core question for me in the study is, whose version of power is remembered and how is it remembered? We know that the one who tells the story definitely owns the power of the narrative. And so when we're talking about narrating a story, it is majorly going to be viewed from the lens, the perspective, and the ideology of he who is telling the story. Or I would say she who is telling the story, because I'm talking about gendering power, particularly looking at the female figures in the methodology. And so the objective is to explore gendered legacy and politics of power portrayal in female figures in Hausa cinema. So when we talk about Kannywood, we are talking about Hausa cinema. So what are the gendered legacies? What are the legacies that have been left by the female figures that are featured in this film? And what is the power portrayal? We have various of power types. And so in these power types, there are portrayals, even though a lot of Kannywood films have not really portrayed women in some type of, power energy. And so now, two questions emerge again. How is power portrayed through female figures in Kannywood? That is the first research question. And in what ways do these portrayals challenge or reinforce cultural memory? Now, I go to the methodology. For this work, I am using Izuojuku's Queen Amina 2021 and Prince Daniel's Maritaba 2024. And so the focus of this study of gendering power is going to be the narratives. The narratives, not only what the film is showing us, but the narrative, other segments that talk about narrative. The narratives are spoken by the characters, definitely, which lead us to dialogue, which lead us to costume as symbols and visual metaphors. Why am I looking into these texts? To gender power. So the rationale for choosing these words is the portrayal of historical female power. The first one is Queen Amina. Queen Amina has been talked about, but I will say that Queen Amina, from the angle of a performer, or from the angle of a film critic, I will say that Queen Amina is an epic story, particularly in mythology. And we know that myths are stories that we do not know if they exist or not, but they are told to us, handed down to us by word of mouth from generation to generation. And so it only becomes a thing to be documented with the coming of, the white supremacists, the documentation of our oral histories. And so because these stories have existed generations and generations before the coming of the white, and because the Black man learns to write, these stories must have been distorted in one way or the other. Definitely, there can't be an accurate telling of a story, even an accurate telling of an event as a thing. Talk less of, a myth of a heroine, a myth of a hero, and the likes. And so the film talks about or narrates the story of Hausa warrior queen Queen Amina. In the film by Izu Ojukwu, Queen Amina is a female warrior whose mother passed on when she is little, and the father, who is the king, refuses to remarry. But he has an escort, a female escort, like all African kings do. And Amina, to upturn and disrupt patriarchal order, challenges his father and some of the decisions the father and the makers, the subjects in that community make, even as a young child. I think as a young child of probably between the ages of 7 to 10, you will walk into council meetings and disrupt and ask questions and why people are being treated unjustly. And so that tells that from that young age, whether according to historical truth or artistic truth, which the filmmaker has the license to reconstruct, is challenging. And so when a child of that age is challenging, we know definitely she is assertive. And so as time goes on, she talks to the father as a young child that she wants to learn the art of war. And the father says to her, we protect women in our community. We do not send women to war. And she says, no, I want to learn it. And the father sends her to learn the art of war, particularly, tasking one of his revered warriors to train her and assist Azaria in the art of war. And so from that age, she learns the art of war, she learns to conquer, she learns to be strong, she learns to be assertive, she learns to be tactical and dignified. And so I would say she's well read as well as well revered. And because she is a warrior, she protects our community from external attacks, particularly from the attack from the Igala kingdom. Afterwards, the father's, I think his wakili, or what is it called, wants to overthrow the father. And definitely we know that for all of these stories, particularly as regarding enthronement, when it surrounds the throne, inheritance, kingship, royalty, definitely we know that there's going to be patriarchal order, there's going to be a tradition versus modernity, there's a lot of conditionings are going to be upturned. And so that is what happened in the Canada. And so the king's mistress, who equally doubles as Waziri's mistress, is sent to poison the king in hope that she will be made queen once the king passes on and Waziri becomes the king. And so after the death of the king, the Waziri enthrones himself. Amina hears of this from the faraway land, and she returns home and turns against our own community, the community she has set out to protect initially, coming back to face in wrath. And that tells us the politics of power, the destructions of power, and the breaking down of hierarchies. And so, by inheritance, she is entitled to the throne. But because she's a female, definitely the throne is to be taken away from her by the uncle and other perpetrators who come together to cheat her out of her inheritance. In the struggle, she loses her younger sister, Zaria. She loses the love of her life, and she loses her father. She loses a lot of warriors, protectors, and she is alone. Invariably, she builds again from that has been destroyed, build again the community in fairness with strength. And so the tension here for me is the empowerment of Queen Amina versus the romanticization, being portrayed as that who is perfect, as that who can, withstand any form of anxiety, any form of, whatever comes to. And so for me, the kind of power portrayed in Amina, the kind of power portrayed in, on the female figure of Amina is militarism. Because for a woman to lead the army of a community, that tells a lot. And so the military that she joins from the younger age tells a lot. And I will say that one thing that is fascinating to me, and I can pick one or two things from Saidu's presentation, is that there is a presence of a priest from the beginning of the film. And I did not know that. I know that pre-Islamic period in northern Nigeria, definitely there was the existence of spirits and spirit mediumship, the existence of, the bokas and all of that. But now in modern day, in contemporary period Hausa society, these are cultures that have been discontinued. And for a film of 2021, reincarnating a mythology of years ago, I think it's about 16th century, reincarnating it and bringing back the presence of a seer who has earlier seen, declared that Amina is coming to fulfill destiny. The father objected, the father standing as, I would say a trope, I would say an image, I would say a representation of Islam and what the northern society stands to be. And here we are on the other side. We have the seer who represents all that there used to be. And invariably, we realize that what the projection, the clairvoyance of the seer eventually comes to pass over what is contemporary and what is acceptable in current day northern Nigeria, particularly in Kano State. Though the story of Amina is said to be from Zaria, that's why she's called Queen Amina of Zozo, because Zozo is a place of a Kaduna State in Zaria. And so, but the story resonates, just like when we talk about the story of Moremi of Ilefe among the Yoruba people. So the story of Queen Amina rings far and wide across the borders of Africa. So for that, that is my first case study. And for the second case study, Memoritaba, that was released last year, the Oscar nominated, 2025 Oscar nominated film, we see a fictional historical story narrated by Prince Daniel, popularly known as Mushi. So the representation of the female is not different from what we have in Kano society or in the Hausa society. The expectation is expected. But one thing stands out in this narration, and it is the fact that a king is expected or has the liberty to name their successor before their passed. And to disrupt patriarchal order and break tensions. This is Sangaya nominating Zangaya, that is the daughter of the princess, to reign after him. Against conspiracies, against what is to be. The father goes all out to ensure that his own blood is on point. This blood is female. unfortunately, can you? No. This blood is female, sadly, but she is still enthroned. But I will not call this a total victory because the way the film ends, there are still uncertainties, there are complexities that are not clear to us. But I will say it is a good attempt by Prince Daniel to take on this challenge and not tell a historical story in which figures we have known, but creating a fictional Sangaya in modern day northern Nigeria to bring hierarchy, though acceptable the way she is presented, but it is still, a break from the norm, a discontinuity from what we know. And so a characterization is vulnerable, yet fierce. A disposition is soft. And you wonder why the king would say, okay, let us name our king. So she's able to navigate patriarchal systems through diplomacy, through success. But unlike in Amina, what we saw was all war, we saw stern and all of that. And the tension here for me is the quiet reform and domesticated manner power is portrayed in the figure of Sangaya. And so, for me, Maritaba represents sovereignty, that is the power, sovereignty, and the woman came true. And so here I have the contentions. Please, can you move? I have the contentions. This is supposed to be contentions, contrast, and ideology. And so, for Queen Amina, the power type she wields is military and confrontational. And from time to time, you hear her refer to herself as, I am Amina, I fear no one. And so the gender dynamics is that she masculinizes power in the way it emanates in every form of it. I think the only time she showed emotion is when the younger sister, when she loses the younger sister and when she loses a lover. And for me, Maritaba, I said that the power type is the woman king thief, feminizes power, and the visual style, narrative style, the visual style is narrative. While for Amina, the visual style is epic action. And so I am looking at visual comparative insights. Please, I'm looking at visual comparative insights of the representation, the portrayal of power using female figures in Kannywood. Now, we have Sangaya in the first picture. This is the way Sangaya dresses in the film. Robed and all of that. And even when she trains to go to war, we see her wearing well covered and all of that. From the outside, her hair is not open. That means there's still continuity of what is in the society, even in Prince's Maritaba. Much as it is a new Kannywood film, we still see continuities. And that is why I will say that she feminizes power. And the second image is that of Amina. Amina, from her introduction to us as a young child, has never covered her hair. She has never covered her hair. And so for me, when I was watching the film, the first question that I asked myself regarding those visual comparative insights is that, does that mean the mythology of Queen Amina precedes the Islamic culture introduction into the northern Nigeria, particularly with the representation of a seer? And so, when we look at all of these things, it is either, or most likely, comes before the introduction of Islam into the northern Nigeria. And as she grows, we realize that she's not feminized in any way. Her clothing are either made with iron, or they are made with raw leather, or they are made in, cowboy style and her boots and all of that. And that is not represented. That is not power. That is not how power is represented in Maritaba. And so, for me, I am going to say that women in Kannywood, I'm drawing close to my conclusion now, and definitely, probably I'll still have some other things to say. Women in Kannywood historical films are complex carriers of power, memory, and resistance. I have read that this complex power structure could definitely be how do you want the characters and the figures to be remembered? Because I know that definitely that is one of the ways the media, particularly the film, captures, designs, and projects an idea in form of a person, in form of a thing to the audience. And so, because they carry complex power dynamics, definitely there's cultural memory, there's resistance, there's protestation. We have those we have spiritualism, like the case of Sarauniya. I don't know, have you seen Sarauniya? Has anyone here seen Sarauniya? The series? Yeah, that is how, when the spirits, or let me say the portrayal of spiritism that we saw in the seer in Amina is fierce. Even from her eyes, the way she talks to Amina, this is your future. This is your destiny. You have to take it into your hands. And so there are some who carry power that are complacent, that are, caregivers, that are nurturing, that are mothers. And so that is why I have said that Kannywood historical films are complex carriers of power, memory, and resistance. So this legacy is agendaed in content and form. When we talk about the content and we talk about the narration, we talk about everything that goes into the film. We talk about the mise-en-scene, we talk about the costumes, we talk about other symbolisms, we talk about tropes, we talk about lighting, we talk about props, we talk about even dialogue, we talk about the movement of the eyes, we talk about the movement of the hand, we talk about body language, we talk about a lot of things. And so how are these legacies gendered? Are they gendered in such a way to motivate women in the society to want to take after these female figures through whom power is being portrayed? For who speaks and who acts and who remembers. And so for Amina to be put into a filmic dialogue, a filmic narrative, it is for cultural memory. It is so that the myth of Amina, even if forgotten, particularly in this day of modern technology, new media, platformization, streaming platformization, and all of that, the story remains. I think that is it. And who remembers? Definitely anyone who watches will remember. And both films, I say that through stylistically reveal the tension between reverence and resistance, tradition and transformation in how Kannywood depicts powerful women. I do not have clear videos because Netflix does not allow you to record. Yes, and so I have to watch on my laptop and use my phone to record. So I'm trying to show how power is represented through dialogue here and through costume. Please, let's play it.
Order to prepare 5,000 soldiers for you. Has Danjuma taken over command yet? Yes, Your Highness. They wait for you at my command post at Brutally. But if I may ask Your Highness, is this war with the Igalas necessary? They killed my sister. And you think Danjuma is worthy of being a commander against his own people? But I am Amina. Do not question my judgment. As you wish, Your Highness.
The next one.
Yeah, the next one, please. And here we can hear her saying, Baride, I am Amina, do not question me. Let's go. Yeah, this is Sangaya training. So we see the way she's dressed and we see the way Amina is dressed. It's still all covered up, despite the fact that she is training and she doesn't even hear yet that she's going to take over the throne from her father. But we see
in one of the sessions I went to,
we see
the video played.
How loose her attire is as expected of females in that society. And so for Sangaya, we realize that power is still portrayed through her from the feminine perspective, even though she subtly disrupts the patriarchal order, but we still see that in dressing, she still represents, she still continues what the society wants. Please, can we go? Yeah. And this is where I have said in my presentation that I will not say that Prince Daniel has successfully embodied female power in this film. Now, the drift is when the king is about to pass on, she passes on the reign of rulership to the daughter. And at the same time, there's a staff of office. Till the end of this film, the staff of office is still missing. You know, it is from hand to hand to hand to hand. She keeps fighting with her army, but she still has not laid her hand on that staff of office till the end of the film. And so without the staff of office, she cannot be enthroned. And so that is why I'm questioning, much as May Meritaba has been, praised, has been nominated for Oscar, the power portrayal in Sangaya has no truth to say this is it. And so when the staff of office is missing, definitely we cannot say that she will be enthroned. And sorry, I have a last one here, please, if you will play it from here. Is a symbolism of Amina's tail.
It was just saying it's video. Can I stop sharing this?
Yeah, that's, yeah. Okay, yeah. Here is just the video of the beginning of Amina.
I'm going to share.
Okay. Yes. This is the beginning of the film. Can you let that image sleep? That particular image. Okay. So when we have Amina, then we just I want to. Okay.
Can I take it back?
No, it's here. That's fine. Yes. For me, the director, Izuojuku, makes a strong statement of portraying military power and confrontation, not only through the character of Amina, but through this image. Because we see that the eye in the middle is a sword, and a sword means to go to war. And so this tells from the beginning that we're about to watch a war film or historical war film. And the male character is a female and a deadly one at that. And so in power distribution, particularly portraying power through female figures in films, this stands out for me. And so for Amina, I would say that the power represented through her is confrontational and military, while for Zendaya in Meritaba, I would say is subtle, though the woman king figure was subtly upturns, patriarchal hierarchy. Thank you so much. So we welcome questions, suggestions now, and comments. There are supposed to be 3 presenters, but the third person unavoidably is absent. So you can throw your questions to us. You can ask us for clarification, please.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to just one question before I go, because I'm going to go in the food. So beautiful presentation from what you presented. I really enjoyed it and enjoyed your work. It was clear that you enjoyed what you were doing and it was educative. So my question just has to do with the free input skills. I think you used Amina as well, and you also used it. But I think to see in your presentation that, because you're also talking about the part of Islam and religion, well, you seem to refer to the post-colonial era. Well, in your own, you refer to pre-colonial era. So, what era was the piece set, and what era is actually depicted?
Which of the things you refer?
Amina
is set in the colonial era.
Yes, refer to your work. You can refer to the post-colonial era.
Yeah, the other team, Matthias, was set in the colonial era. As we came in where I was discussing both Matthias also and the chronicle that comes before Matthias also, that is the Wanegari and Matthias. But Amina itself was set in the pre-colonial era, but then Mati as also was a post-colonial era.
Yeah, okay, but see, yes, but the colonial, but Amina was meant to be
pre-colonial. Yeah.
That means that you cannot interpret in the issues and the dynamics of the post-colonial era.
In
what?
Please, open the book.
My name is Musa Ramsey from Religious. So I think the angle you're coming from is I want you to understand the context where they are coming from.
Yes.
We are talking about continuity and discontinuity. Okay, we are talking about what they're trying to do. They're taking you from the post-colonial to see how what is expected of a woman king or a female child that inherits power from her father, right? From her behavior, from her dressing, from the way she addresses people, from her personality. There are expectations of her in the law. A princess, even if you're not going to be a king at the end of the day, a princess, royalty, certain families, there are noble families, there are kingmakers, there are noble families that are known in particular lifestyle. So there are expectations.
I think that's
I'm going somewhere. Your question is why the movie should not be interpreted in
No, he was referring to colonial era.
That's colonial is so
I want to
It
make sure that
it just show you the progression, the evolution, how
idea.
Islam, from that time. So that's just to show you how it started, as spiritualism was mixed, Islam was mixed with syncretism during the colonial period in Amina, it portrays that. But then as we move forward to the colonial period, then we see how Islam now grew, where we see critical Islamic issues are being addressed.
Okay,
So
I think you better answer the question.
Private are sustained. What they are taking you to is in the post-colonial, there are ways that people live. And even if now in pre-colonial, not everything has been decided. Even within the evolution, there are some aspects of culture and religion that is being carried despite exposure and everything.
Thank you very much. Okay, please.
Thank you very much. And also, I love it. I need something there. I'm hearing of the, I don't know much about it, but you're exposing Chisa. I don't believe you have told so much embedded in your work that at a point in time, I got confused. I didn't know whether you're talking about Islam, because as syncretism, you also said Islam as syncretism. Now, I don't understand the concept of syncretism because I want to believe you should apply. So, in the kind of syncretism, it's a mixture of religion, spirituality, and tradition. That's what I grasp. I don't know that of Islam. That whether it's a mixture of Islamic religion and that of traditional religion. And because you also mentioned the studies were also much. Because now you were talking about tea, planting, you mentioned that where the man was, having several children at every point in time, and you also said something like, according to Islamic injunction, should not have more than 4 wives. That's the issue that came up, that okay, if you have more than 4 wives, you should not kill your father or the head of the 5th wife is not going to inherit the property or whatever. So that's where I have a problem. Not too many issues that you have, the Christian that separated can develop so many people, 5 to 6 people from your stuff. That's why I say your studies wonder. But you have so many, your theological issues, number 4 of them.
Hello. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay. So it was the first time I saw the presentation, I had about 4 theories, so just too much work. But if you are talking about Islamic injunction, that's something. Talk about that because when from there you also left that place to talk about the Amino of Zazal, that there was the Islamic something was not to pronounce until the priest said Allah. Exactly. So what exactly are you trying to say in the Amino of Zazal? And what exactly are you trying to bring out in the other 4 3 movies, the Mati of Zaza and other things? What it must be well stated where the point of convergence and the departure, where they depart, because we are talking about continuities. Now they're also trying to establish the area of what was present in the colonial that was continued and what was discontinued. Exactly. I guess that's the point or the focus of this panel. Discontinuities and continuity. And I guess from your topic, you go discontinuity / this / continuity. So let's know what tradition. Are you talking about the tradition, or are you talking about Islamic tradition, or the outside tradition, as different from the Islamic tradition that was not from the pre-colonial and are still sustained in the post-colonial? And what was in the pre-colonial that has been continued in the post-colonial? Exactly. So if you do that, sir, then like I said, people want to talk about Islam, so let's talk about Islam. People want to talk about the tradition of Hausa, right? Let's go to talking about the culture of Hausa now. So like it's a suggestion. It's my opinion, fully my opinion. Your work papers, I believe, can be developed if those things are actually celebrated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So,
thank you.
Dr. Ruthie, then we'll come back to Dr. Henry.
I'd like to make a clarification. As Africans, there's no one. There's no African person, there's no church. And literally in all our religion, the religion that we now divide, there's a part of simplicity, be it Islam, or Senate. In Islam, that's why they feel Ori has some secret series, and that's why to an extent is going they're trying to make it way to exchange of that. Ori originally is not even a religion, it's an ancestral system of worship or religion. Not that of not that we have what we have an ancestral way of life. That is in Ori. But now, because we never took attempt to look at the commercial aspects and other aspects, and we just tag it as, oh, it's part of this increasing that is practiced in Islam. Because you can't, if you put where they're doing the Quran, that they start with citing some classes of the Quran, like you pray. So you're taking someone, you said, you're talking about religion or you're talking about the I want you to know that you can't talk about religion.
No, that's not what I said. All I'm saying is,
I think
I think that what he tries to say is that for him, who is just encountering, the concept and conceptualization of Kannywood and all its entails, he got confused.
Okay.
That he should try to simplify it. The point of departure, the point of convergence, and all of that to reflect the theme. You understand it, and particularly the title of the panel. That is what he's trying to.
I was thinking he said, you were telling him that if he's talking about Islam, let it be about
Yeah.
Yes. That is why I am trying to make you understand that you can't do religion without culture, you can't do culture without religion.
I know that I was
It's not clear to him.
Okay.
So he wanted
exactly.
Yes.
This is religion.
Yeah.
This is a culture.
Yes.
We touch each other.
Yes.
I think I totally agree with your issue of your suggestion comment that histories are quite much and that they distributed at all. The issue of syncretism and the point where I'm going from, syncretism is when you mix one religion with another traditional. So that's syncretism. So now, going back to to that era, 16th century, I told you that Islam came into Zazzau in the 15th century.
Yes.
You understand? So, and that does not prevent the kings from engaging in tradition, even though they accepted Islam. You understand? But it does not prevent them from what? From doing their spiritual and traditional religion and culture. So, to the extent that Islam was even taken as secondary to these traditional practices. So the mixture of these two things here is what I refer to as syncretism here. Acceptable in Islam.
Yeah. I'm familiar with that type of the same concept that was used for Ghana. Because syncretism is common in the idea of cultural anthropology as when it comes to African studies in Cuba, Caribbean, the Caribbean islands. So when the Catholic, when they got to that place, they had to, in order for them to get it happen, people they have to syncretize with them, their rituals there. So I don't know much about Islam. That's why I said that was, and that was why I said there should be, clear whatever, because for people like us that are living for the first time, they are coming in and are interested in diversity, there should be a clear something of that.
Yeah.
Of course, I understand that the culture cannot be without mixing with each other. Culture move far, Egyptians, Nubians, all those things, I understand. But like I said, like I noted, a lot of things were put inside the wall that if you separate them, you get enough paper. Not just one, not just two, I'm sure of five. Because you mentioned a lot of Islamic laws that people like us don't know. Like the issue of the marriage, and another thing I wanted to ask you is that how do you know the first wife from the second wife? So we know the first one, but how do you know the second, third, and fourth? Then you said they are going beyond four, and those other parts that came in, when they legal, they were not legal. So which means some of them don't actually qualify. So it's quite controversial. So and that alone, like I said, can stand on his own as a paper. Just exactly. So those case studies were so much that a lot of things can come out of them. Yeah, that was the off, not
Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll take Dr. Femi.
Thank you very much. Let me start from the issue of Islam entering in 2000, the 15th century. Actually, I've not proved that aspect of it, but I don't want to agree with that. I want you to move further because as far as this 8th century, Islam has entered the environs of the.
No, I guess he said something like that.
Yes, you re-echoed it when he was trying to explain further.
No. You are not there when he did it. He said,
Yes, he now mentioned it.
he said the Islam that come before the
Yeah, he said it. He said
He
it.
said this.
He said it's not like come before, I mean, for
Yeah,
the myth
Okay.
of Queen Amina.
He said that this.
Okay, maybe when he was now talking, so what I said made me to.
He said it. He mentioned it.
I was like, this is the technique to, I rejected.
Okay.
And so much you said it.
So then to
For me.
when she was talking, she said Zaria happened to be a younger sister to Amina.
Yes.
Okay. Because let me say the little I know about when they say Queen Amina of Zaza. So most times it is swapped for Zaria. But I'm getting an understanding now that Queen Amina of Zaza is an elder sister to Zaria.
Yeah.
Okay. So now it is Zaria now. Is it this present Zaria? Is it the younger sister to Amina? We need, as we are trying to discontinue and continue some historical phenomena, we should also be able to contextualize it. The existing Zaria town, is it a replica of or the descendants of that younger sister to Amina?
Okay. Can I?
Okay.
If you have, I think you should
So
consider.
that's one that I want to go into. Then another thing is concerning the Amina of the scene.
Yeah.
And skill of, you mentioned that she has never in her life, maybe based on the film, covered her hair. And I don't know the justification of Islam, because the Islam we know up to date, ladies must cover their heads. So, and Islam has been existing before her emergence.
Yeah.
And now, if she is going contrary to the tradition, then there should be something to it which must be proved. Why is she not adhering to the culture? So meaning, or there might be something that her father might have told her, which no one heard about.
I'm very sure that the trial was to say, apart from the father, the part of the source of our strength, not like the air of Samson, is the source of the strength. Exactly. That's the what.
Okay.
So then again, sorry to. In some pictures we see that we see how always probably the like the last picture of the book, that the book cover is. So
no, that's not Amina, that's Zangaya. That's Zangaya. That's Zangaya in Maritaba. Her head is covered all through.
Okay.
You get it? And that's big her. And it's not covered. It's the picture. It's not covered.
The picture that I saw
it's not covered. I will show you. It's accessories. She has accessories.
There's a spot, a show class that is hanging on.
It's accessories. It's the hair.
No, I'm going to show that both sides are there.
I know.
The one that was standing there.
It's not covered. It's not covered. It's not covered. It is Sangaya that is covered entirely.
There's another thing about terminal that I heard that I was never mentioned that every time I speak to issues.
No, I was coming. I wanted to mention that, but let me go.
Sorry, I don't know whether it's
yeah, let me quickly answer his question. And the first question again.
About the area of
yes, I think it's symbolic.
Okay.
You get it? From the perspective of a film critic and a performer, it is symbolic. What it simply means is that Zauzau, the town of Zauzau, you had Queen Amina of Zauzau.
Yeah.
Now, she is an identity as well as the town. If you say Queen Amina, you say of Zauzau, anybody would ask you. And so Zauzau is synonymous to Amina, just that the way Amina is synonymous to Zauzau. And so in this context, Zauzau stands as elder to Zaria. I don't know if that answers your question.
Because in the mythology of Hausa states,
Yeah.
Amina or Sausa wasn't mentioned, but Sausa was mentioned. But Zaria wasn't mentioned.
Yeah.
So how do we justify the continuity and discontinuity of the historical facts, the truth?
I don't know. I'm going to because that should be my question. And as a performer, as a creator, I am telling you there's a difference between artistic truth and historical truth. And that is where the artistic license of the director, who is the owner of that work, comes in. And so it becomes a staple. So whether as a historian you have an issue with it, is now left for you. Whether as a religious person you have an issue with it, is now left for you. But that work has been sealed by the author as,
He has the license. Okay.
He has the license.
What happened. There was a film I watched, sorry, this film. The film is titled Agemo.
Okay.
Then I was privileged to visit Ijebu.
Yeah.
Also privileged to visit another location of those states. Both has Agemo. And I was told that they are brothers. So the Agemo Ijebu is portrayed to have a seat and a staff. The Agemo in those states is portrayed to have a mat. That's right. Then when I observed, and I now saw in a film, the Agemo staff I saw is not long. But the one I saw in the film, very long. Then I was bitter. Said these people are corrupting the culture. So, but now you are telling me, so you are not corrupting, but no, I can get it because I was going to sue that.
No, you read that, so you that thing in our law. Because I have in the 16. I'm not here one very people don't so the one you saw was just 2 out of 16. And then was.
Yes.
Because the truth is,
Again, out of the two that I saw, was it that the star is the star? Okay, maybe there might be one that
keep that stars. Hey, your masquerade of Lagos. You know that your masquerade of Lagos does not actually belong to Lagos. It belongs to Iperu. Yes, and according to history, the Lagos got married to one of the Iperu, and they went to visit. They went to visit their in-laws. They liked what they saw. And they had to bring somebody from Iperu down to Lagos in that time to come and teach them the ways. And when Lagos saw it, they liked it. Yes, and they decided to put it up. And most of the people in that Lagos town, 2 days, Salego, some of them are travelers. Most of the people that came to settle back in this to settle in that area of Lagos and decided to want it and make it big. So now you think is a cultural material of Lagos State. Why is not people back of Lagos State? Now, by the time you talk to Lagos, they started saying Olokede, whatever, giving different
We just want to use your power.
exactly, having different Do you understand me? But in the truth, you see different colors in Lagos. But by the time I got to funny enough, I've been to Ibadan, I didn't see as much color and elegance as I saw in Lagos of AU. So that's all. By the time it gets to a particular place, there will be a little bit of discussion or addition to whatever it is. That's what I think.
You know,
To make
I found
tension, they're actually looking.
and you know, when I was making my presentation, I talked about the handing down of this culture and cultural artifacts and whatever the people are before the coming of documentation. And so we know that one of the characteristics of whatever that is passed down is the distortion, whether by an addition or by a subtraction. And so there cannot be an historical accuracy of that phenomenon. I don't know if I'm right, but
Well, I was thinking because from our uncle, when we say
you should not staff authority. I want to I don't know. I've been trying to contact the owner of the writer or the producer of the movie. Because people they can ask questions as to why it was it deliberate or was it an omission or was it I don't know whether
I understand.
Maybe that was
In fact, the film was screened. There's a film festival I am actively a part of. We call it Kilaf. You should know about Kilaf. Kano Indigenous Friendly Films and all of that. I'm an active member. And Memory Chaba was released July 19, 2024, and it was screened at Kilaf in November. Yeah, in November. But you know, a lot of people wanted to talk to him, a lot of people wanted to see him, and even the questions, I was the one coordinating the session, and I didn't even get the time to ask my questions. And since then, we have not even seen him talk and you know, like that. But I know that I'll see him one of these days, and that is one of the things that you know has continued to ring a bell in my head as to why the female that is supposed to disrupt patriarchal, you know, tensions will not have the staff of office eventually, you know.
and I want to sustain the hierarchy.
I thought as much.
Coming from that background, so we're not strengthening.
Yes. So you know, that is my thought. And another thing that I observed in the narrative, in the visual, is that the way Amina is being focused on from the beginning of that film is not the same with Sangaya in the Marital. In fact, in most of the scenes we see her, it is dark. We see her in dark scenes, and that tells a lot. I don't think there's a dark scene over Amina in the entire film. So that tells how power is being projected through this female figures. You understand it? So I know the conversations will be definitely.
You know, if this Sangaya, if it's related to a particular aspect of the issue, I don't know if it's based on.
I will say that when I watched it, the first thing that came to my mind is the tensions of traditional rulership in Kano between the former Sanusi and you know that pretty much comes to mind, and I think that is what you know he has recreated figuratively to be projected in America. Thank you everyone for coming to my session. It's always interesting, you know.
I would love to have more two materials. I would appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll send it to my email, to my WhatsApp or email. I'll send my email through your WhatsApp.
Okay.